The cafe was unusually quiet that afternoon, except for the soft hum of conversations and the clinking of cups. It was the kind of place where people came to unwind, not to draw attention. But that peace shattered when a tall, well-dressed man in designer sunglasses stormed through the door. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Can you hurry up already?" he barked at the woman behind the counter. Everyone turned to look. The woman he was shouting at was simple in appearance. Plain clothes, hair tied back, no fancy jewelry. She had that kind of gentle face that made people feel calm. Her name was Anna. She smiled politely, trying to stay composed as she prepared his order. "I'm sorry for the delay, sir," she said softly. But the man wasn't interested in apologies. He leaned over the counter, his arrogance filling the room. "Sorry doesn't make my time worth less," he sneered, slamming his card down. Then, without warning, he raised his voice again. "Do you even know who I am?" Whispers began spreading through the cafe. Some people pulled out their phones. Others looked away, uncomfortable. Anna lowered her gaze, clutching the cup in her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. Still, she didn't argue. She simply said, "Sir, please calm down. I'm just doing my job." But the man, blinded by pride, took it as defiance. "Shut up," he yelled, his voice echoing through the cafe. The sound was sharp, startling everyone. And then, in a moment of reckless anger, he pushed the cup away, spilling coffee across the counter and onto Anna's apron. Gasps filled the air. Anna froze. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from disbelief. For a second, the world went completely silent. Even the background music stopped. The man, still breathing heavily, straightened his tie and scoffed. "People like you should know their place," he muttered. Then he turned around, expecting everyone to stay quiet. But a voice came from the corner table. Firm. And dangerously familiar. "I think you should be the one apologizing." The man frowned, turning to face the speaker. Sitting there was another man, dressed simply in a dark shirt. His posture relaxed, his expression unreadable. He had been watching everything from the moment the shouting began. The bully's arrogance faltered for the first time. "And who are you supposed to be?" he snapped. The stranger stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving the bully's face. He walked toward Anna, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Then he turned to the bully again. This time there was no warmth left in his gaze. "You really have no idea who you just insulted, do you?" The cafe seemed to hold its breath. Even the arrogant man's smirk faded slightly. Something in the stranger's tone carried weight, authority that couldn't be faked. Whispers started again, and a few people exchanged glances. As tension thickened, Anna looked between the two men, confused. The bully straightened his suit again, forcing a laugh. "What, are you her husband or something?" The man gave a faint smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Something like that," he replied. The cafe lights flickered as the air grew still. The next few seconds would change everything. But no one there could have guessed who that quiet stranger really was, or the power he held over the entire city. The silence inside the cafe was so thick you could almost feel it pressing against your chest. The bully's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. The calmness of the stranger standing before him didn't fit the situation. It was too composed, too sure. He wasn't just defending Anna. It was as if he had the power to end the argument with a single word. But no one yet knew who he really was. Anna looked at him again, her eyes filled with confusion and gratitude. She had seen him before, once or twice, quietly sitting in the corner, always polite, always observing. He never caused trouble, never drew attention. To her, he seemed like an ordinary customer. But now, the way he stood between her and the man who had humiliated her, it felt different. There was something commanding about him, something that made even the arrogant stranger hesitate. The man in the suit shifted uncomfortably and tried to regain control. "Listen, I don't know who you think you are," he said, forcing a laugh. But this woman messed up my order. I don't owe anyone an apology. His voice was still loud, but the confidence in it was fading. The stranger didn't respond right away. He simply studied the man's face for a long moment, as though deciding whether he was worth replying to. Then he said quietly, "You should walk away while you can." The bully scoffed. "What, are you threatening me?" "No," the man replied calmly. "I'm giving you a chance to show you still have some respect left." A hush fell over the room again. The barista in the corner stopped steaming milk. A mother pulled her child closer. Everyone could sense the shift. The arrogance was draining from the bully's face, replaced by a nervous twitch he tried to hide. But pride wouldn't let him back down. He straightened his shoulders and pointed at Anna again. "You think because she's your friend you can talk to me like that? You don't know who I am either." A faint smile appeared on the stranger's lips. "You're right," he said softly. "I don't know your name. But I know your type." Anna felt a chill run through her. There was something about the way he said it. Steady, controlled, almost like he'd dealt with men like this before. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Through the window, dark clouds began to form over the city. Inside, no one moved. The stranger turned slightly to Anna. "Go take a break," he said gently. "You've done nothing wrong." Her voice trembled. "Sir, please. I don't want trouble." He looked at her then, and something in his eyes softened. "You already had enough trouble," he said. "Now let me handle the rest." The bully crossed his arms. "You think you can handle me?" he said. His tone still defiant but his eyes uncertain. The stranger tilted his head slightly. His expression calm. "No," he said. "But I know what you're afraid of." The man blinked, thrown off balance. "Afraid? Of what?" Before he could answer, a phone rang from a table nearby. The barista jumped and answered it quickly. Within seconds, her eyes went wide. She turned to look at the stranger and whispered to a coworker, "That's him. The one who owns." The rest of her words faded as the stranger gently raised a finger, signaling her to stop. He gave a small, almost apologetic smile. "Let's keep that between us," he said quietly. The bully frowned. "Owns what?" he demanded. But no one replied. Only the quiet hum of the cafe returned. Anna stood frozen, her mind racing. Who was this man who spoke with such calm authority, who could silence a room with a glance? She didn't know his name yet. But soon everyone in that cafe, and the arrogant man who had just humiliated her, would find out exactly who he was. And by then it would already be too late. The cafe remained tense long after the confrontation began to cool. The arrogant man, his name was Richard, was no longer shouting, but his ego wouldn't let him walk away. He looked around, noticing the stares, the cameras pointed in his direction. People were recording, whispering. His voice shook slightly as he said, "This is ridiculous. I'm not the bad guy here. She should have done her job right." Anna, standing behind the counter, stared at her trembling hands. She could still feel the sting of humiliation, not from what he had spilled on her, but from the way he made her feel small. She'd dealt with rude customers before, but this one had crossed a line. And yet, she couldn't understand why the quiet man was standing up for her so fiercely. There was something about him, something familiar in the way he carried himself, calm yet powerful, as if he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. "Sir," she said softly, "you don't have to do this." He turned slightly toward her, his expression gentle now. "Sometimes," he said, "silence only gives more power to the wrong person." Richard scoffed. "You talk like you own the world." The stranger paused, his gaze steady. "Maybe I do," he replied quietly. Laughter erupted from Richard. "Sure you do," he said mockingly. "You're just another guy pretending to be someone important. I can buy and sell people like you." A man sitting near the window, who had been quietly watching everything, stood up. His name was Daniel, one of the cafe's regular customers and, as it turned out, an employee at one of the biggest corporate firms in the city. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You might want to be careful, Richard," he said. "That man isn't pretending." Richard turned sharply. "What are you talking about?" Daniel hesitated. He'd only met the stranger once before, in a completely different setting, a high-profile corporate event where only top executives were invited. The same calm eyes, the same voice that commanded silence in a room full of millionaires. "That man," Daniel whispered, "is Alexander Cole." The name spread through the cafe like electricity. Few people gasped. Anna froze. She had heard the name before, on the news, in magazines. Alexander Cole, the quiet billionaire who rarely appeared in public, known for owning several major corporations across the country. He wasn't flashy, didn't seek attention, and lived far from the chaos of the media. No one expected a man like him to be standing here, defending a cafe worker. Richard blinked, suddenly pale. "That's not possible," he muttered, his arrogance starting to crack. Alexander gave a faint, knowing smile. "Possible or not," he said, "you should treat people better. You never know who's watching." The cafe door opened just then, breaking the silence. A middle-aged woman in a tailored suit stepped in, her phone pressed to her ear. Her eyes went straight to Alexander. "Sir, there you are," she said breathlessly. "The board has been trying to reach you all morning." Richard's face turned red. Every eye in the cafe was on him now. The woman continued speaking, oblivious to the tension. "We've confirmed the partnership meeting at your office for this afternoon. Would you like me to move it?" Alexander shook his head. "No, it's fine," he said. "I'll handle it after this." Then, turning back to Richard, he added quietly, "I believe you and I will be seeing each other again soon." Richard frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Alexander leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough for Richard to hear. "Let's just say your company's contract renewal depends on the man you decided to humiliate today." Richard's jaw dropped. For the first time, words failed him. Anna stood behind the counter, stunned by everything unfolding before her. Alexander glanced at her one last time, his tone softening again. "Don't let anyone make you believe kindness is weakness," he said. "It's the strongest thing you have." As he left the cafe, everyone watched in silence. The door closed behind him, leaving only the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Richard stood frozen, his confidence gone, while Anna tried to process what had just happened. But this was only the beginning. What neither of them knew was that this brief encounter would ripple far beyond that quiet cafe, changing their lives and exposing secrets that had been hidden for years. The rain outside had turned heavier, tapping against the cafe windows like a slow drumbeat, echoing the tension that lingered in the air. Richard sat down at a corner table, his arrogance replaced by an uneasiness he couldn't shake. His mind was spinning. Alexander Cole. The name wouldn't leave him alone. Every news headline, every business article he'd read about the mysterious billionaire now flashed in his head. And to think he had yelled at his wife in public, spilled coffee on her apron, and told her to know her place. Anna stood quietly behind the counter, still processing everything. She had never felt so small and seen at the same time. Alexander's words replayed in her mind. "Don't let anyone make you believe kindness is weakness." Something about his calm strength had reached her in a way that no one ever had. But with that comfort came confusion. How did this man even know her? Why would a billionaire care about what happened to a cafe worker like her? As she cleaned up the spilled coffee, her co-worker leaned in and whispered, "Anna, that was your husband, wasn't it?" Anna froze. "What do you mean?" The girl glanced nervously toward the door. "That man, Alexander Cole. The way he looked at you. Everyone could feel it. It wasn't just concern. It was personal." Anna's hands stopped moving. Her heart began to race. For a long time she had lived a quiet life by choice. She had walked away from a world of luxury, of headlines, of whispered names that carried power. The truth was, she and Alexander had been married for 5 years, but few people knew. He had always respected her wish to live simply, to work, to stay grounded. And she never once used his name for advantage. But now, after what happened, everything she tried to hide was starting to surface. Meanwhile, outside, Alexander's black car was parked across the street. He sat inside silently, staring at the rain sliding down the windshield. His assistant sat beside him, phone in hand. "Sir," she said, breaking the silence, "should I call the legal team? The man's company is under your control now. One word from you and—" Alexander interrupted softly. "No, not yet." She looked surprised. "You're letting him off." He shook his head. "I'm giving him time to realize what he did. People like him destroy themselves without my help." His phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. An unknown number. He frowned and opened it. The message read, "You shouldn't have shown up there. Some people are starting to ask questions about her." Alexander's expression darkened. He looked back toward the cafe, watching Anna through the window. A flicker of worry crossed his face. Inside, Richard was pacing now. He couldn't stand still. "This isn't over," he muttered under his breath. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Get me everything on Alexander Cole," he said quietly. "I don't care how much it costs. Find out who he really is, and who that woman is to him." He ended the call and looked out the window just as Alexander's car began to pull away. Their eyes met for a brief second through the glass, one man filled with regret and pride, the other with quiet control. Anna watched too, her chest tight. She wanted to go after him, to thank him, to tell him she was fine. But before she could, her phone vibrated. It was a text from Alexander. "Don't go anywhere. I'll explain everything tonight. But for now, be careful. Someone's watching you." Her breath caught. She glanced around the cafe. Everyone seemed normal. Customers sipping coffee, scrolling through their phones. But suddenly, every face looked suspicious. The storm outside grew louder. Lightning flashed across the street. And in that brief moment of light, Anna thought she saw a man standing near the edge of the parking lot, watching her through the glass, unmoving, his gaze fixed on her. Her heart pounded faster. She blinked, but when she looked again, he was gone. Anna's fingers trembled as she set her phone down. The text from Alexander still glowed on the screen. Short, direct, but heavy with warning. "Someone's watching you." Her eyes darted around the cafe again. The rain had thinned, but the silence that followed was thick and unsettling. The man she thought she'd seen outside. Was he real, or had fear started to play tricks on her mind? Richard had already left a few minutes earlier, slamming the door on his way out, muttering something about payback. But his absence didn't bring peace. If anything, it made the air heavier. The customers slowly resumed their conversations, though their glances still flicked toward Anna from time to time. Her coworker leaned closer, whispering nervously, "Are you sure everything's okay?" Anna forced a small nod. "Yeah," she lied, though her heart was still racing. She tried to focus on her work, but the unease wouldn't leave. When she turned toward the window again, something caught her eye. A black car parked just across the street, headlights still on. It wasn't Alexander's. This one was older, tinted windows, engine running. She could feel the presence inside, like whoever was sitting there wasn't just passing by. Her phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from an unknown number. "You were warned to stay away from him. Now it's too late." Anna's stomach dropped. She felt her knees weaken slightly, gripping the counter for support. Her mind raced. Who was sending these messages? And how did they know about her connection to Alexander? She hadn't told anyone, not even her closest friends. Their marriage was private for a reason. Meanwhile, across town, Alexander sat in his office. His eyes fixed on a series of security feeds displayed across multiple screens. The cafe, the street outside, even the parking lot, all being monitored. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, our surveillance picked up a tail," she said. It's the same vehicle from earlier, the one parked near the cafe. We traced the plates to a company owned by Richard's father. Alexander's jaw tightened. So it's personal, he said under his breath. He's digging where he shouldn't. His assistant hesitated. Should I alert the security team? Not yet, he replied, standing slowly. If they're watching Anna, then they want me to react. And if I do, they'll know they're close to something. He paused, his voice lowering. But they're right about one thing. It might already be too late. Back at the cafe, Anna was closing up for the night. Most of the customers had left, leaving behind only the sound of the espresso machine cooling down and the faint rhythm of raindrops outside. She turned off the lights one by one, but just as she reached for the door to leave, the reflection on the glass made her freeze. Behind her, through the dim glow of the last bulb, she saw a shadow move. She turned sharply. Nothing. Only the quiet clatter of a chair shifting slightly, as if nudged by the wind or something else. Her breathing grew shallow. She tried to tell herself it was just nerves, that the day had been too much. She grabbed her bag, locked the door, and stepped out into the rain. The street was nearly empty. Only the black car remained across the road, engine still running. Anna hesitated, her pulse quickening. She started walking faster toward the bus stop, trying not to look back. But halfway down the block, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a message. It was a call from an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello. A deep, calm voice spoke on the other end. Anna, don't go home, the voice said. They're waiting for you. She stopped cold. Who is this? She whispered. The voice didn't answer right away. Then came a quiet sigh, one she recognized instantly. Anna, it's me. Her breath caught. Alexander. Where are you? But before he could respond, the line went dead. And in the distance, across the rain-slick street, the door of the black car opened. Slowly, deliberately, as a figure stepped out, watching her with unreadable eyes. Anna's pulse pounded in her ears as the figure stepped out of the black car. The rain had softened to a mist, but the night air felt heavy, charged with tension. Streetlights flickered above, casting broken shadows on the wet pavement. She wanted to run, but something held her still. Fear mixed with a faint hope that maybe, just maybe, it was Alexander. But as the person moved closer, she saw it wasn't him. It was Richard. His expensive suit was soaked, his hair plastered against his forehead, but the arrogance was gone. What replaced it was something darker. Desperation. Anna, he said, raising his hands slightly as if to calm her. Wait, don't be scared. I just need to talk. He took a step back. What do you want? He looked around nervously, lowering his voice. You need to tell your husband to stay out of this. He's destroying everything, my family, my company, my life. I didn't know who he was, all right? I didn't know he was your husband. Anna shook her head. Then maybe you should have treated people better before you found out who they were. He sighed, his breath visible in the cool air. You think I'm the bad guy, but I'm not. There's something bigger happening, something even he doesn't know. Your husband isn't the only one watching. Before Anna could respond, headlights flared from the corner. A sleek black SUV rolled up silently, its tinted windows reflecting the rain. The doors opened, and two men in dark suits stepped out. Richard froze, eyes widening. Oh no, they found me. Anna's confusion deepened. Who are they? Richard turned to her, panic creeping into his voice. They're not with your husband. They're from his board, his own people. You think he runs everything, but someone else has been pulling the strings behind him. They want control, and they're using you to get to him. Before she could process his words, one of the men called out, Mr. Cole's wife, please step aside. This doesn't concern you. Anna's instincts screamed at her to run, but she stood her ground. It does concern me, she said firmly. Tell me what you want. The man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat. Richard stepped in front of her. Don't, he shouted. At that exact moment, Another car screeched to a stop behind them. The door flew open and Alexander stepped out. Rain splashed around his shoes as he walked toward them. His expression unreadable. His calm more terrifying than anger. "I told you to stay away from her," he said quietly. His gaze locked on the two men. The air seemed to freeze. One of them hesitated. "Sir, it's not what you think. We were ordered by." "By who?" Alexander's tone was razor sharp. The man didn't answer. Instead, he gave a small nod to his partner, and both slowly backed toward the SUV. Within seconds, they were gone, the vehicle disappearing down the road. For a long moment no one spoke. Only the rain filled the silence. Richard turned to Alexander, his voice trembling. "You don't understand. Your own people are trying to take you down. You're being set up." Alexander looked at him steadily. "I know," he said simply. "That's why I let them come." Anna frowned, her confusion deepening. "You knew?" He nodded. "They've been leaking information for months. Tonight, I needed them to reveal themselves." Richard stared at him in disbelief. "You used me." Alexander's expression softened slightly. "No, Richard. I gave you a chance to show who you really were. You chose your side." The younger man looked down, shame washing over his face. The arrogance that once defined him was gone, replaced by something more human, regret. Alexander turned to Anna, brushing a raindrop from her cheek. "It's over now," he said quietly. "You're safe." But just as she exhaled in relief, her phone buzzed again. One last message flashed on the screen, from the same unknown number as before. It read, "You think you stopped us? This was never about you or him. Look closer at who's standing beside you." Anna froze, her gaze lifting slowly from the phone to Alexander. For the first time that night, something in his eyes looked different, something she couldn't quite recognize. And in that quiet moment beneath the rain, she realized the story wasn't over. It was only beginning. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. Everyone's eyes were on Michael as he stood beside the woman who had once been labeled as nothing more than a simple housewife. But today she stood tall, strong, composed, and unbroken. The judge's words echoed softly, delivering the final verdict that brought justice at last. The truth had finally come out. How she had been mistreated, how her pain had been hidden behind the walls of wealth and power, and how love, when built on lies, always finds a way to collapse. Michael turned toward her, his expression full of regret. "I was wrong," he whispered. His voice trembled as he reached out, but she didn't step back. She just looked at him, calm and dignified. "It's too late for apologies," she said quietly. "Sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go." There was no anger in her tone anymore, just a quiet acceptance that came from strength and healing. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, flashes lighting up the steps as she walked down with her lawyer and her daughter by her side. The woman who once cried in silence was now a symbol of courage. She didn't need revenge. Her peace was her victory. People cheered her name not because she had won a case, but because she had found herself again. In the days that followed, Michael sold his company's shares and disappeared from the public eye. Rumors spread that he moved abroad, starting a charity in her name, a silent act of redemption for the years he could never take back. As for her, she started a small organization for women who had gone through similar pain, a place where voices were heard and hearts were mended. Her daughter, once afraid of her father's temper, began to smile again. She helped her mother run the foundation, sharing their story in schools, on talk shows, and online platforms. The story of the simple woman and the billionaire husband became a movement of hope. Months later, she stood by the ocean, the same place where she once felt lost and unwanted. The sun dipped low, painting gold across the water. She closed her eyes and smiled, the breeze brushing through her hair. "Thank you," she whispered, not to him but to herself, for finding the strength to stand, to speak, and to heal. Michael watched from afar that day. He didn't approach her, didn't say a word. He knew she didn't need him anymore, and for the first time he respected that. He turned and walked away, leaving her with the peace she had always deserved. The story ended not with revenge or regret, but with redemption and growth. It was a reminder that wealth can build walls, but truth breaks them. And sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who choose kindness, even after the world has been cruel. In the end, love didn't destroy her. It rebuilt her, piece by piece, into someone far more powerful than she ever thought she could be.